Techsauce Global, sparking innovative thoughts. For the first time in history, humans are living longer and longer. However, across the world, countries are struggling to figure out how to sustain aging populations in resource-constrained settings. Hello, this is Techsauce Global Podcast, a podcast series by Techsauce Media seeking to share and inspire you with the latest innovative ideas. I am your host, Chaowarat Yongjiranon. On this episode, we seek to find out how technology, such as AI, can be leveraged to improve senior care. Our guest today is Professor Zhen Xu, the faculty director of MIT's Hacking Medicine Initiative. He is a senior lecturer in healthcare innovation for both the MIT Sloan School of Management and Harvard MIT Health Sciences and Technology program. He actively consults companies in pharma, medical tech, corporate venture capital, and healthcare systems adapting to global digital transformation. Hello, Professor Zhen. When you think about the future where, everyone's going to be aging, we at one point have to think about how we're going to spend the rest of our lives. And with technology nowadays, it seems as if there's a lot of hope for a potential in terms of how healthcare will develop itself and, how life will be better. As a leading expert, how do you foresee the evolution of medicine over the next decade, particularly in addressing the needs of aging populations in developing countries like ours?
Yes, it's the most exciting time in the history of medicine worldwide, right? But I think especially for countries that have been considered emerging, but have leapfrogged in, mobile phone and mobile phone first cultures, right? And with the potential to leapfrog and really get in the driver's seat for innovation, because the U.S. has evolved, its FDA and its government and its healthcare system, but it's not perfect, even though it still remains the largest market in the world for healthcare. Part of that is because we spend more than anyone else on healthcare, and not really in an organized, systemic, single-payer, government-led way. That's part of its strength, but there are weaknesses and trade-offs there. My friends and my students are inventing what only gods used to be able to do, right? True cures for diseases, including rare genetic diseases. We have so many new technologies washing over, both societies but also medicine. And, some of them are just small, convenience technologies, but many of them are really important technologies that can cure diseases or at least mitigate chronic diseases. And of course, we've got environmental pollutants and bad diet that is also washing over society fast and changing society. So many people in Southeast Asia are moving from what was traditionally a rural diet to an urban diet with more fast food. I'm seeing that as I live here in Indonesia, but I saw it in China and I saw it in Thailand since 1997 when I first went there. And those things take new medicines and new behavioral interventions, and all of that is being changed with technology and how fast technology is changing, including AI.
So it's interesting how you pointed out that, the situation in the States, it is a country that spends a significant amount of money in the healthcare system. When you compare that to, let's say, in developing countries in our region, Thailand or ASEAN, in developing economies, excluding Singapore, How do you, I mean, I just wanted to follow up a little bit about what do you see in terms of how medicine, the evolution of medicine, as you said, that has evolved and has, really done remarkable things. How can it be applied, or how would it play out with its application in this region as a developing region?
Yeah, so what I teach in my healthcare ventures class at MIT and Harvard Medical School is that um, oftentimes the way our technologies expand to emerging markets is that you start at the top of the pyramid, that the wealthy request and get access to the new technologies, whether those are chemotherapy agents for cancer or immune and autoimmune drugs that are too expensive for governments to afford, but they pay out of pocket. And that adoption starts with the very wealthy, and then you figure out how to move it down the pyramid, right? And how to move it to as many people as possible. Some of that is not possible until those medicines turn generic, and low cost Indian and Chinese factories can manufacture that at scale. Other times, the rising middle class rises to a price point where they can demand it and pay for it. But we have a lot of these societies in Southeast Asia that have more of a culture of out-of-pocket payments for healthcare, and of course, in rising economies, they very quickly realize that health is wealth. And the filial and family responsibilities in tight-knit families. I watched in China as more and more people got cancer, and then you would have to sell a house or sell an apartment for grandma's cancer. And there's a culture of an acceptance of that because that's where your wealth is stored. So it does look different than in economies that are insurance-led, right? But then you have the waves of insurance that form layers over your basic healthcare system, and so that's an evolution that really country by country is different but similar, and they're all marching towards systems where you have different levels of care, different willingness to pay, and you have different health systems that can deliver those new therapies and new diagnostics and more sophisticated chronic care. So the path can vary from country to country, but I think we're all, including America, marching towards these systems that have multiple layers of wealth and willingness to pay, and different healthcare systems that can deliver various treatments, and that's just the challenge of adapting, societies and big healthcare systems to the myriad of technologies that are washing over us. The latest just being artificial intelligence and computer logic to help with the deluge of information. And there's so much information in the published clinical literature, in the academic basic science literature, and a lot of that is noise, and a lot of that is wrong, and a lot of that is the first pass on truth. But why I love medicine and the technology in medicine is that we have these standards of truth, and America cannot reach the gold standard yet. Thailand has different gold standards, Cambodia, right? Different. But we can all measure against that gold standard, and human biology is generally the same, right? But then we have, even Harvard Medical School's Joslin Institute for Diabetes has shown the real challenges of Asian societies and genotypes moving to urban diets get diabetes quicker, at a younger age, and at a more brittle form of diabetes, right, in moving to that urban high sugar, high starch diet. And so we've got international institutions trying to tailor things to the culture and to the local food and to the local challenges, including genomic differences that make the diseases different for different people.
Mm. No, you know, expanding on what you said, obviously there's challenges that we have to address, and you did mention that in terms of how people afford medical care. But as our needs change, we are going towards an aging population. What do you identify as the key challenges that developing countries face in providing adequate care for the aging populations?
Right. Well, there are many challenges to that. If we think of it as a foundation of a house and an institution, and that we're building it, the foundation is good medical care, good medical education, right? And I just learned myself about Siriraj. I knew it by reputation, but I learned a lot more on my last trip about Siriraj and how the medical curriculum is really founded and based on Harvard Medical School's curriculum. That is the cornerstone of the house, right? Having enough doctors to keep up with the aging population, and enough doctors and nurses, of course, who do even more of the work in the healthcare system. And especially as you push a healthcare system, I think every healthcare system in the world now is getting pushed from the hospital out to the home, right? You're moving things out of the big downtown hospital that's hard to park and loaded with people. You're moving it to ambulatory care clinics. You're moving it to satellite hospitals that have the same protocols, the same educated doctors, but you're treating them in the satellite clinics. And then, of course, the extreme version of this is into the home, home monitoring and home treatments that are able to be administered safely by the patients or their caregivers or a visiting home nurse, right? And that is the infrastructure that you need, that Thailand only has pieces of. But I think in a, grab Uber economy with those technologies, you can move some of this stuff and manage the logistics of some of these things in new ways, which is very exciting. And that's another area where Thailand and Indonesia, societies that are founded on village and island societies, right? Archipelagos are more attuned to sophisticated telemedicine than any others.
I think that's exciting in terms of, what you mentioned, because I was going to also talk about that in terms of how our developing economies have leapfrogged, as you said, especially during COVID-19. You've seen vendors, the elderly people jump very fast into e-payments, and it would be so exciting to see that similar kind of flow towards medical care as well, and going towards that. The hot word AI is transforming many aspects of healthcare. How do you see AI playing a role in improving elderly care, especially when we have resource constrained settings?
Right. Well, American founder Ben Franklin said it best, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. And there are a bunch of needs that are changing, and we realize have changed after the pandemic. And that will change behaviors, including those of the elderly who typically, use and take up new technologies slower. But again, if the necessity and the solution and convenience merit it, and we make it easy for them to fit it into their lives, they will. One of my favorite ideas from when we hosted a Singapore hackathon for Singapore's 50th birthday, which also was based on a theme of aging in place, right? Was the internet connected tea kettle, because grandma makes tea so many times a day, and her making the tea is a metric of health, right? Just knowing that is fairly non-invasive in her life. It's not like we're putting a video camera on in her room, right? But to know that mom made tea 6 times today shows me that she's active, and and if she only made it once, I should probably pick up the phone and call and see what's wrong, right? So simple things like that that can fit in lives can have really even more powerful effects than the standard medical devices, right? One of my what I'm going to emphasize and give as an idea at the Thai Siraj hackathon is, how do we take a remote control and re-engineer it with some health aspects, health measurement aspects, because it's something that grandma uses every day. It already fits into her life. And if we can put the right sensor, we could measure her Parkinsonian tremor and the progression of it, right? Ideas like that just take engineers coming together with healthcare professionals and patients to figure out what is a solution for a big problem that technology already has a solution for, that we can bring together, right? We know that will work, right? That's the essence of hacking medicine right there, is clever solutions that don't take complete new invention and new paths through the FDA or other regulatory bodies, but how do we make things that actually help people in their daily lives?
I think you pretty much kind of like answered the next question about aging in place. And I think everybody kind of understands that. I mean, especially here in Asia, as you said, it's more of a village mentality, that the elderly, yeah, we do have some homes like in the States, like in the West, but ultimately everybody would like to be at home. But as we change our family units, we have more like we're more separated. Even in my case, I have a camera monitoring my grandmother, but it's just there's so limitation. There are limitations, and if you want to think about, we'll probably jump towards like having an AI robot take care of our grandmas. That's even more controversial, and that might take some time. But for the readers of this article, aging in place might be kind of a new concept to think about, especially here in Asia, in terms of how technology and innovation can support elderly individuals who want to live independently. And you did mention that about, using certain technology that you might overlook to be kind of like the monitoring infrastructure that we put in place for these homes. But can you expand a little bit more about how it might play out in terms of resource limited environments such as Thailand?
I don't know that there's going to be many trade-offs in resource limited environments. I think that, like everywhere, it will be unevenly distributed, right? But the chance for these technologies to be invented in Thailand or Southeast Asia and boomerang to other countries, including back to the high-cost U.S. system, has never been greater. I am seeing lots of things that are getting proven out in South America, in Southeast Asia, and boomeranging back as lower cost, better solutions than what's on the market in the U.S. today. And I think that it's unevenly distributed, like a lot of things, and there will be things that people can't afford, but more and more with the consumerization of healthcare and real solutions for healthcare that are not healthcare, only official products, and not having to go through the FDA, but more wellness products, it's a really interesting time. Now, you're always going to have things that have a risk benefit, and enough risks that the American FDA or Thai FDA or others will say, we're going to regulate this. We're going to regulate who can deliver it, who can take it, and who pays for it. then that is the government oftentimes getting in the middle and saying what they will regulate. And the sands are shifting there too, right? Because uh, in America there is the notion of regulatory barriers as a good thing, seen by the largest companies, trying to keep out smaller competitors with new inventions, and using the government system in order to keep those barriers high. And that's not necessarily true in other economies that are weighing the health of their populations in a different way. So I think policy is really important here, and really the voice of the patient really needs to become more powerful everywhere. And when patients decide that they want to take that personal risk for themselves, it pretty much should be their prerogative to do it. And there are even new pop-up governments and systems that are being tested. One is a special economic zone here in Bali, Indonesia, that is all around the new international hospital, and that is allowing approved drugs and diagnostics and medical devices from America and elsewhere that have jumped through all those hoops to be brought here and be used on medical tourism, but also on the local population as they want, without the approval of the Indonesian FDA. And that's a radical step, but it's one that's trying to leverage all of the invention and commercialization that has happened outside of this country and bring it in more rapidly to be used for the benefit of tourists, patients, and the medical system that gets to use those technologies sooner, gets to understand where they're appropriate and inappropriate for the most patients, and build businesses around that, even while the Indonesian FDA has not yet approved them. And I think that is really smart. Really smart for an adaptable system that is trying to leapfrog, right? And yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to agree that definitely this is something that we're seeing across the board in Asia as well, in terms of how important the private sector has become in a lot of aspects. But let's take a look at the public sector. Why not talk
Sure.
about the big picture here. As we have the infrastructure lacking in some developing countries, how do you think strategies or innovations can be approached in planning to effectively bridge the gap?
Well, that is farther afield from my expertise, but I can try and weigh in on some of it, because I'm not a public policy and a public health expert. But I've learned from many students. Typically, a quarter of my class at MIT and Harvard Medical School is School of Public Health graduates, and it is much more challenging to move a big ship, right? To turn a big ship, and to pay for what is ever increasing technologies and new medicines, right? And for decades in America, the whipping boy that everyone blamed for rising healthcare costs was new technology, right? Because the new orthopedic implant or the new artificial joint or the new brain implant cost much more than the last one, right? You pay more for new improvements. It's the latest technology. The costs are higher, and that has been driving healthcare costs. But you know what drives healthcare costs much more than that? The doctor's fees, the hospital's fees, the clinic's fees, the ambulance fees. All of that stuff adds up to, in America, 2/3 of the healthcare dollar spend, right? And of course, that's growing too with inflation and with the epidemic of burnout, there where more people are leaving the profession, and there's a shortage of doctors and every kind of specialist and every kind of nurse. And that's true in developing countries around the world as well. And so what we have is now, I think it's being appreciated, and we've been teaching this for probably 10 years, but it's really starting to be appreciated on a more widespread level internationally, is that technology is the only thing that can both increase the access to patients who have been disenfranchised by the system and are on the outer edges or that fall through the cracks. It's the only way to expand that access while reducing the costs, because technology costs go down, right? And go down oftentimes with Moore's law, like genomics, that has progressed 10 times Moore's law, which is that march down the technology cost curve, right? And at the same time, increase the quality, because you have a protocol baked into a simple product that the patient at home can use, right? Think of an at-home pregnancy test, right? Which was revolutionary in America, and revolutionary for families and for women to decide for themselves what to do, right? That's powerful. And so I think, moving from and using those as models of product design, that the ultimate product is one that the patient can use safely, effectively themselves in private or with their families to decide what to do next. But of course, lots of technologies that are in the clinic system are at the pharmacy that you can use. And of course, ultimately going to a hospital and seeing a specialist and having it used. But those technologies wash over and get integrated into society, and society has to pay for them, both at the individual private level and at the public level. And that is where the balancing act and the policy needs to be driven, which is, we can either provide, this is happening in America, and I'm sure it's happening in Thailand too, we can either provide basic care for these chronic conditions of aging for everyone, of every wealth level and every health level, or we can pay for 100 of these people to try to battle their cancer and extend their life for, on average, 4 months, right? And that is the debate that's going on in every health system. Now, of course, the latest anti-obesity drugs, GLP-1s, which cost upwards of $10,000 per month for a health system, right? And are expensive biotechnology drugs that have incredible benefits even beyond obesity, right? I mean, people's cardiac health is lower. People's cancer burden is lower for these drugs. The good data keeps coming out, and yet they're very expensive patented drugs that will be only available to the wealthy in America and in other countries. And what do we do about that? How do we extend faster, the use of those drugs? Well, when they're patented and branded, it is very tough, because that is exactly what a patent is. It's a monopoly right to sell and to make. But very quickly, those GLP-1s will start going off patent, and countries will have more equal access to them. But even before then, there is incredible science all around the world that is learning about the GLPs, why they work, how you could improve them, how you can attack that same metabolic pathway with different drugs, maybe some that are already on the market, maybe some that are long, old generic drugs. But now we know how we can use them in a different way. And that's the knowledge, catching up and being distributed everywhere. And that's why we need great medical schools in every country to be doing that research and helping balance that invention impact versus broad dissemination and use when it's merited, when it's safe, and when it's effective. Sorry, that was a long.
No,
That was
no,
a hard
I
question.
know. I'm sorry, but I'm so happy I asked it because you answered it so well.
Okay.
And it
We'll see
goes
what it
to
looks like
our
in
next.
print.
Well, I don't know. In my mind, it's great because it goes into our next question, and that is the exciting news about the hackathon.
Yes.
Scaling age care in developing countries, focusing on aging in place and geriatric care, because as you said, you do need the environment to that proper environment to spark and innovation. What are the primary objectives and what solutions do you hope to see emerge from this?
The primary objective is for me to bring my MIT grad students to Bangkok, um, have them lead an event to teach Siraj Hospital staff and students how to have these events, and for them to learn it enough that they're comfortable enough that even with the cultural differences between America and Thailand, that the Thais can lead these on their own and create more of these events, because these events are where the magic happens. You don't come out, we don't really measure how many startups do we have started out of this event, right? Even though we've had dozens of startups and over $2.5 billion of venture capital money go into startups that started at this event or in my class. But that's, been over the last 15 years. We're still going with that. It's actually accelerating. So we feel like we're just getting started. But what we're confident of is that we can teach this internationally, so that other folks can hold these and you don't need us. Right? It's the same saying and an adage from the 1800s when certain new surgical skills were getting taught. Right? It's see one, do one, teach one, and we do the same thing with these medical hackathons, because very quickly you should not need us, and very quickly you should see the energy that it brings out of your own students, doctors, patients, engineers that want to have a health effect, right? One of the most powerful components of these healthcare hackathons is PhD students and engineers that can build things, right? The power of building stuff, and prototyping stuff, and figuring out and testing those solutions and putting them in front of the patients to see if they can use them, right? Because drugs don't work in patients that don't take them is another famous saying from our old Surgeon General C. Everett Koop. But it's so true. So many patients don't take the drugs that they are prescribed and that would statistically help them. And so what is the reasoning? That gets into the emotional and mental state of the patients. That gets into their family dynamics. That gets into whether they can pay for it and whether they have to pay for it out of pocket, which is a public policy point, right? All of those things have to be weighed and figured out. Healthcare is the most complex industry because of all these challenges, including emotional and behavioral challenges, and whether ability and willingness to pay. So for all of that, what we need is I'll pick an example, a medical device on my desk. We need people to invent and prototype medical devices that then they can put in front of doctors and patients and say, how would you use this? Could you use this in your daily life? How much would you be willing to spend on this? How much does it save in total healthcare costs that offset the cost of this device? They have to, and that takes designers, that takes, the electrical engineers, that takes the public policy folks that can calculate what the impact is relative to the costs, and whether it's worth it at this price point. Is it worth it at this price point? No, if we can get it down to here, it can take off, right? All of those things are such complex decisions and interrelated decisions. And so that's why the hackathon is very intentionally built with 1/3 healthcare professionals, 1/3 engineers and PhDs and people that can build, and software coders, right? And 1/3 of entrepreneurs and patients, right? And folks that can think in terms of the economics of this and the home use. We need all of those people in equal parts to create the cognitive diversity at our events, where these things can be tested. Outlandish, crazy ideas can be tested, right? So many things can't be tested in the regular medical environment, and that mindset ends up putting blinders on people so that they can't test wild and crazy ideas, and that is where some of the magic comes from. So what we bring is the permission from MIT to think about some of those crazy ideas and to test that with people on the ground, because we can't think of crazy ideas back at MIT and just say they're going to be right for Thailand. It needs to be the Thais, with the Thai capabilities of the medical system, the Thai culture, right? And the Thai engineers to think about it better for Thais, right? And probably for all of Southeast Asia. If it's invented in Thailand, you guys probably have, enough similarities where it can get made over in China if you need, or made in Thailand, but imported fast, and you could have it on the shelves in 6 months if it were the right product.
Well, cross-disciplinary collaboration, I think, as you said, is so crucial. But I don't know, there could be challenges, right? In when working together. What's your advice for the participants?
Our advice for the participants is always the same, and the graduate students have heard the mantra enough and seen it work that they're the ones that teach it. And that advice is: open your mind, listen more than you talk, don't dominate the talking, create teams with cognitive diversity and lived experience diversity, and focus and start with problems. And big problems that make you angry, that make you annoyed, that you have seen and witnessed your grandmother go through in her healthcare journey, right? We have all have examples of terrible experiences in healthcare. And it's not for doctors' lack of wanting to solve those, right? It's not for lack of doctor skills, right? You have great doctor care in Thailand. It's for the creativity that comes with thinking different, using existing technologies that we can take off the shelf and reapply that sensor or that electronic circuit or that electronic device in a different way as a component in a medical solution, and then prove that it actually is efficacious, right? In a randomized, blinded clinical trial, right? That is the gold standard for proving that these things work. It's not necessary for all healthcare and wellness products to go through that, but it's intellectually honest. And what we need are great entrepreneurs that don't want to make, crap that charges some aspect of the healthcare system, but really doesn't bring true improvement in people's lives and health. And instead, think about clever hacks, clever solutions that can be made at much lower cost, be available in your market to your population, and then potentially prove out the efficacy in such a way that it's so good that, gosh, Americans are buying this, on different e-commerce sites because they want access to it, and it's clever and it works and it's easy to understand and use.
I think, that's the ultimate goal, whether you're in healthcare or not, in terms of being a startup, that you want to be able to scale, you want to be able to, make that sustainable growth. But it's a big challenge. So how can we ensure that this happens in the long term?
We can ensure it by having creative students. We can ensure it by having a flexible medical system that can adapt, right? And that can adapt to new technologies and new products, but also adapt to the new knowledge. The knowledge gusher is inundating every healthcare clinician and academic researcher, right? There's so much knowledge coming out, and it's not all true. And so you have to sift and sort through it. And it's not all good for the Thai population or the Thai medical system and the infrastructure that you have or don't have, right? But that's what's most powerful, is getting the people and the information and then figuring it out if it's right for your system. And so we just need more people being educated in these systems. I've met a bunch of medical school students who say they will not plan to practice after being in medical school, both in Thailand as well as in Indonesia and elsewhere, for very different reasons, right? Some are for personal reasons, but many are for economic reasons, that they don't get paid enough, and that they are at the top of the academic ladder in terms of ability to learn fast, to learn about complex things like medicine and biology, and then to apply those in creative and different ways. And they don't think their best path is staying in the medical system. And that is an incredible shame. And it's a waste, right? It's a waste that they took up a spot at medical school and don't plan to practice, right? Whether you're a nurse or a doctor, we have shortages of both, right? Or that they plan to practice, in America because they can get paid a lot more. And so that leaks skilled, maybe the most skilled in your system, to the American system. Well, that's not good for the Thai system either. You have to create a system where, in an environment where they can flourish in Thailand. And I don't know how to solve any of that, but
No,
those are problems that I see and hear on a regular basis. And that's part of human flourishing, is that they are able to move for opportunity and curiosity. And that's a fantastic thing. And we just need to educate more students through the system. And I think Thailand could do a better job than we've done in America, because the Thai culture and ability to emphasize mathematics and science in the early years is fantastic. You should have more doctors churning out of your medical system.
Well, I think that's still a big challenge. Okay. I think the last one, we kind of talked about it already in terms of government policies and support. Is there anything else you'd like to add on that point, or no?
I just hope that someone from government and public health, comes to the hackathon so they can witness the chaos, the good chaos, right? But these things are hard to describe on paper. It just doesn't, right? But it's managed chaos. But it is a series of collisions that is engineered. This is a designed process to take people, smash them together, put them on teams, focus them on problems, have them work through the process, and look at what's on the market versus what they could create there. And so many teams are able to prototype something completely new there on the spot in the span of a couple of days. And I'm always amazed at what comes out and where they go. And so I hope that there are government and public health people that will be there to witness that, because what we've shown in America, and my students have gone to do it, is that we can embed them in government, in public health, in our Veteran Affairs healthcare system, which is the largest system in America for healthcare, is for treating the Army and Navy and frontline veterans. And they implemented the innovation systems there that we invented at MIT, and it's become a big, successful innovation program within those systems. But you have to be in those systems. Those systems have their own politics, they have their own budgets, they have their own personalities, and you have to take those into those systems and try to infect them like a virus and grow within it, but in a good way, like a good virus. There are good viruses. We
Yeah.
have some of them battling cancer right now.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Anything else that we missed or you'd like to add?
No, thank you. Thank you for the good questions. I appreciate it. And I hope you get to
Yeah.
come to the, I hope that
Yeah.
Techsauce gets to come be represented at the hackathon.
Thank you, Professor Zen. We are definitely excited to see the results of the hackathon, Scaling Aged Care in Developing Countries, focusing on aging in place and geriatric care. That's it for our latest episode of Techsauce Global Podcast. For more in-depth conversations like this, check out our podcast series at techsauce.co. Thanks for joining our conversation. We hope you've been inspired. See you in our next episode. Techsauce, sparking innovative thoughts.